Well, welcome back to the Cybersecurity Whisperer for the week of July 7th. It was super nice to be able to take a week off and spend some time relaxing on the beach with the family. Certainly a lot happened in the security world, so let's just dive right in. First, quickly, we'll touch on the TicketMaster breach. Again, part of the larger Snowflake data breach. But it's interesting now that Ticketmaster is discrediting the dark web claims that there are stolen barcodes for, well, they said specifically the Taylor Swift concerts, but just tickets in general. It's something I hadn't thought about. When the criminals stole from Ticketmaster, they stole everything, all of their data. So the credit card numbers, the customer data, passwords, and barcode scans of the tickets for all the events they had that they had already sold for. But Ticketmaster has said, I don't know if you've ever used the app when you go into stadiums and events now. It does have a rotating little barcode around it. And the barcode does change, kind of like your multi-factor code, every 60 seconds. And they've had that in place for years, more from a fraud perspective, like taking a screenshot and trying to pass it to multiple people. That doesn't work. And so, again, these barcodes are scanned at the entrance for events, and the hacker offered about 170,000 barcodes for sale, with about 20,000 for each show of these Taylor Swift concerts. And they threatened Ticketmaster with more leaks if they didn't pay their $2 million ransom, claiming they have $30 million barcodes, including NFL games and concerts and more. But again, Ticketmaster said, we're not worried, we're not paying anything, because they have a safe ticks technology that protects tickets by automatically refreshing a new and unique barcode every few seconds, so it can't be stolen or copied. So don't fall prey if you see some cheap tickets out there. Again, always only buy them. Unfortunately, you have to pay these fees. I don't like paying them either, but from any of the I think probably 2 or 3 reputable ticket firms, the Ticketmaster and a couple of the official resale ones. It's interesting. You probably saw some information about the Supreme Court and the Chevron doctrine, and never did I think it would impact cyber, but it may change future cybersecurity regulation. Experts expect new legal challenges to come from this ruling and the different requirements, including incident reporting mandates and rules governing critical infrastructure sector. So if you're not familiar, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled last Friday to overturn the Chevron doctrine. And this comes at a time when federal agencies have enacted significant requirements designed to strengthen incident reporting and meeting baseline security standards. This ruling will likely lead to new legal challenges against recent cybersecurity regulatory measures, including, if you think about the 2023 incident reporting requirements from the SEC. If you think about the Chevron doctrine, it stems from a 1984 case in Chevron USA, the gas company, versus the National Resources Defense Council, which set the precedent for courts to yield to the expertise of federal agencies to interpret ambiguities in a statute. And the U.S. Chamber of Commerce called the Supreme Court ruling an important course correction that will help create a more stable and predictable business environment. If you think the SEC passed a rule in 23 that requires all publicly traded companies to report cyber incidents to the agency within 4 business days of determining materiality. Companies, they have to file these updates that outline their strategies to how they're going to mitigate the risk. And in October, the SEC filed suit, against SolarWinds, alleging the company and its CISO defrauded investors by failing to disclose its true cybersecurity risks leading up to the 2020 supply chain hacks by state hackers. And the Chamber of Commerce filed briefs in the SolarWinds case arguing that the SEC had expanded its authority in the case far beyond the original intent of Congress. And so, with this ruling, potentially those reporting guidelines could change. So more to come on that for sure. If you haven't seen the Open SSH, there are over 700,000 Open SSH servers vulnerable to a new remote code execution that was discovered by Qualys researchers. It can be exploited by attackers to gain unauthenticated remote code execution. With root privileges, the highest you can get. And they didn't give it a CVE, but it's critical. It's a significant security risk, and if exploited, of course, could lead to full system compromise. Whether an attacker can execute arbitrary code with the highest privileges, resulting in complete system takeover or installation of malware, data manipulation, creation of backdoors for persistent access, it's just not good. And again, the vulnerability, which is a regression of previously patched vulnerability. It affects OpenSSH 8.5p1 up to 9.7p1. But if you've got the latest available update, which is 9.8p1, that fixes it. And so the vulnerability probably also exists in Mac OS and Windows, but the researchers haven't confirmed this yet. So you need to update your OpenSSH as soon as possible. Here's a super interesting one, considering that back during RSA conference in San Francisco, I rode in one of the Waymo robo-taxis, driverless cars, which I thought was an incredible experience. I loved it. They're all electric Jaguar SUVs, completely driverless. It was just a really incredible experience. Only in a very small defined area around San Francisco and in Phoenix right now. Well, Phoenix police this week pulled over a Waymo robo-taxi for driving into oncoming traffic. And Waymo responded saying the issue was due to inconsistent construction signage, just telling you these are good, but we're just not quite ready for true driverless cars. This Phoenix police officer again pulled over the self-driving Waymo, and apparently the vehicle became confused by construction signs in the area and ultimately ran a red light before pulling over in a parking lot so the office could speak to the Waymo support representatives. And they published body cam footage. The officer can be heard telling the Waymo support, the Waymo car pulled over, rolled down the window, and then connected to the Waymo support, kind of like the OnStar support. And the officer said, hey, the car went into opposing lanes of traffic, which is real bad. But according to Waymo, the car went into the opposing lanes due to inconsistent construction signage, and the vehicle ran the red light in an effort to clear the intersection, knowing that the police car was behind him. Here's what's interesting. Officers cannot give tickets to self-driving vehicles, so no citation was issued. Interesting, very interesting. Not so good news that, this week a cloud provider fended off a record-breaking DDoS attack. It seems every few months we see another record-breaking one. It just gets to this insane amount of bandwidth on the internet. And this one was by a France-based OVH cloud, which is a cloud provider. This reached over 840 million packets per second, which surpasses the prior record. This is not a record you want to break, of 809 million packets per second. Against Akamai back in 2020 when a hacker tried to take down a European bank. Now, again, DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service, overwhelm an internet service with traffic knocking it offline typically. And over the years, cybercriminals have come up with various ways to launch these DDoS attacks, which can, just take terabits of data per second or millions of requests per second. In OVH Cloud's case, the attacker leveraged a packet rate attack, which can overload the packet processing engines to a web property's networking devices rather than merely deplete the bandwidth. Just always getting more creative. The attack, again, reached 840 million packets per second, and it originated from over 5,000 different IP addresses. And OVH Cloud, through its investigation, determined that that this came from a group of high-capacity micro-tech routers, which may have been hijacked to launch these attacks. OVH Cloud points to how micro-tech routers have suffered from vulnerabilities in the past, and many of the affected devices also operate with an open internet-facing HTTP interface. In addition, OVH Cloud has uncovered evidence that there's over 99,000 micro-tech routers currently online with the capacity to launch much higher packet rate attacks. So again, you need to, we'll link out, but you need to update the firmware on your routers, your home routers, whatever home router that you have. I checked, these Microtech are certainly available all over Amazon, Wi-Fi routers, home routers. You need to update the firmware, and you need to make sure you're changing the default password and turn off the interface that leaves them accessible to the entire internet. If you need to make changes on them, you're going to do that when you're home and you're on the private IP space. You don't need to make those internet accessible for the admin pages, because that's how the bad guys get in and take advantage of them. And in our final story here, this seems like every day we see that these hackers are releasing more and more passwords to the dark web. So a hacker uploaded 10 billion plain text passwords to a crime forum on the dark web, and they're calling this RockU 2024, and it comprises earlier credentials that were a database that was put out there called RockU 2021, which featured 8.4 billion. So, they added 1.5 billion new passwords. And they cover the period 2021 all the way through 2024, and it's been estimated that the latest credential file contains entries from about 4,000 different databases of stolen credentials, again, over the last 2 decades. So What this says is really, to me, two things. One is use a password manager that searches the dark web for these, and when it finds any of your passwords that have been exposed, it just forces you to change them. And we'll link through to, again, the 2fa.directory site. You need to have multi-factor on every single site you have, no matter how simple you think it might be. The sewing club, or anything that you're in, the pickleball club, or but certainly your social media, your bank. All those sites, you need to have two-factor on there, and if so that when your password is stolen, because all of our passwords are out there somewhere, and the bad guys put those in, they're still not able to get into your site. Again, like and subscribe. Send me any feedback and comments. And if any of you have questions and want to be interviewed on one of the upcoming shows, be happy to set up a Zoom call or something similar to do that as well. Take care. Have a great week.